Well, the scandal over the IRS targeting of conservative groups getting uglier now. Former IRS official Lois Lerner, she may have retired. But the Tea Party and dozens of other organizations expanding their lawsuits now to 22 states. And lawyers representing them now say they want the president put under the microscope over what he knew about the scandal. Jay Sekulow is the chief counsel of the American Center for Law and Justice, which filed those lawsuits, and he is my guest. Good to see you, Jay. So now you're amending your original lawsuit. You're including the president, but you're not really naming him as a defendant. So how are you pointing the finger at the president?
Well, what we've done, Gretchen, is over the last 4 months since the initial lawsuit was filed, we followed the evidence, and we've had a number of congressional oversight hearings. There's been more documents produced, and what it showed, and it continues to show, is that if you look at the timeline, the president made statements, whether it was criticizing the Citizens United case, or whether it was in fact just statements about what he called these 501c4 unregulated groups, and then weeks afterwards, the IRS starts taking direct action. Then we had the connection between the IRS and the Federal Election Commission. That was communications between Lois Lerner and FEC lawyers. That was not supposed to happen. And then we had, of course, Carter Hall, the career IRS lawyer, testify under oath before the House committee that, in fact, the cases were taken over by chief counsel of the IRS. The chief counsel, of course, is actually appointed by the president. It's one of two appointments the president makes within the Internal Revenue Service, the commissioner of the IRS and the chief counsel. So in both of those situations, you've got evidence that's simply pointing upwards. And then you've got the famous email from Lois Lerner where she said, everybody is clamoring for us to clamp these groups down and to do something. And then, of course, we know what she does. She just stops granting the exemptions. So this is looking like that. Yeah, go ahead.
No, you go ahead. It's looking like what?
It looks like that what's happened is the IRS and its higher-ups were reacting to the statements that were made by the commander-in-chief, by the president. We don't have a memo from, or at least at this point, from the White House to the IRS, but we do have a situation where statements made by the president resulted in actions taken by the IRS. So why he should be shocked that there was this targeting going on is really a bit confusing at this point, to say the least.
So in this amendment that you're filing, you're adding new names of people associated with the. So what do you hope to achieve by adding these new names?
It's pointing to the people that were ultimately making the decision. So as the case has matured, and this is typical in federal litigation, I came out of the Office of Chief Counsel in the IRS a long time ago when I started my career, and I've been litigating cases a long time. And what happens is evidence has been coming forward through congressional hearings and other Freedom of Information Act requests. Information comes out, and it points higher up the food chain, so to speak, higher up the supervisor level. So it goes from the agents in Cincinnati to Washington to supervisors within Washington to now heads of departments, including tax exempt. And you've got the head of the Obamacare Enforcement Division, Ingram. She is now, she was in charge of the tax exempt group when all this was going on. So all of this evidence is pointing to a much more controlled Washington presence in this entire audit review process, and it looks like they were simply reacting to the commander-in-chief, to the president's statement. The president was wanting to get behind these, what he called anonymous C4 organizations, and that's why they asked, for instance, the IRS, Gretchen, for membership lists and donor information to try to get behind these organizations and basically pierce the First Amendment.
But why do you think this story has sort of fallen off the front pages of the newspaper? Because, you know, we really never got to the bottom of it. We had a whole bunch of hearings, but we never really got to the bottom of it, did we?
No, we haven't. You had let's say the last 3 weeks we've all been occupied with other things, including the government shutdown. That was the major news point. I think you're going to see in the very near future, though, Gretchen, and I can tell you this, there's going to be some additional hearings, and it's going to include the chief counsel of the IRS being asked to testify under oath. So I think as Washington ebbs and flows, this issue now will become front and center again as some of these other scandals. And you've also had the whole situation with the Obamacare healthcare.gov rollout disaster that the administration is trying to handle. You got Kathleen Sebelius saying she won't testify right now. Now maybe she's changing her mind before the House. So you've got basically a symphony of problems in Washington right now. This IRS one happens to be a big one, but I think the attention will come back to it as these others recede back. It's an ebb and flow in Washington.